Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode. I'm Ombarus, and yeah, this week the format is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be extremely busy for the next couple of weeks, and I'm trying to cut down on my editing a little bit. So, no camera setup and everything, just computer view, and I'm going to show you what I've been working on. And as usual, it's going to be a bit of a like both tutorial and devlog about what I've been doing this week. So. This week I've been working on traps like the infamous falling rock that you have in NetHack that can kill you or your cat if you don't have a helmet on. And this meant adding a couple of new features to the game, so I'm going to show you how I tackled all that. So if you've been looking at my videos for the past 4 or 5 weeks, you'll notice that it's been a lot about the visual and everything. But now I'm kind of happy with where the visuals are right now. So I figured it's good enough that I can go back to what I really like doing is that programming gameplay. I've been keeping notes while I was working on other stuff about what I can add to the game, what I should make that would make the game interesting. I've been keeping notes everywhere, like in Trello or even in Google Keep. And from all of this list, looking at it last week, I decided okay, what I want to do is the traps. And what I decided to do is that they would be called basically anomalies. So they're unknown stuff in space that you encounter that will give you some various side effects to your ship. I decided to go with anomalies because this is something that's going to be added into the space. And because I don't have a typical dungeon crawler with walls and rooms and stuff like that, my levels feels a little bit empty. And adding some more stuff that I can spawn inside the level, I think is very important to the feel of the game to make it more um, interesting and had more diversity to what you can find as you're exploring the space. So the basic concept I thought is fairly simple. Anomalies are going to attach effects to ship, and most of these effects are going to be negative, but there could also be positive one. I have slow, but I could also have haste. So I'm not 100% sure that anomalies are going to give positive effect, but I want to keep that in mind as I design the system. And as usual, I looked at other roguelike, I look at what they do, and I figured, stuff like aggravate monsters, speed, stealth, strong, and in Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, you have stuff like held, flayed, or fear, or dazed and corrosion. And some of these I cannot apply, but some of these might be useful or interesting to add inside my game. And after some thought, I decided that I needed to break this task down into three basic steps. The first one is going to be creating some kind of behavior that can transfer effect status to a ship when it passes over an anomaly. And then the second step is, of course, going to implement the actual effect of each of those effects. So actually implementing the slow, the haste, the poison, the confusion, and stuff like that. And the last step is going to be hiding those anomaly from normal detection and just adding a chance to discover them when the ship is inside the range of the anomaly. And so the first thing I did, as usual, is to start with mocking up the data that I wanted for this particular thing. So I created three anomalies, basically energy siphon, slow, and blind. And the idea behind choosing those three specific example is that they're going to have very different impact on the game, meaning that I'm going to have to cover most of the potential issues that I might encounter adding effects in the game. So, for example, the energy drain or the energy siphon, it's going to be something that happens instantaneously, where slow and blind are effects that are going to last a couple of turns, and then uh, slow is going to affect the game as a whole, like it's going to affect the action points you spend when you're moving or doing stuff, where blind is going to affect your equipment, mostly your scanner. So it's very different parts of the engine, and it's going to let me make sure that whatever I design is going to be able to work for anything I might want to throw at it. So after I designed the data structure for each anomalies, I went ahead and I implemented the anomaly behavior. And what the anomaly behavior does is pretty simple. It first, on level loaded, keep a cache of all the anomalies in the level. And then every time something moves, it's gonna check if this ship moved on top of an anomaly, and if it did, then it's going to trigger this anomaly, and it's going to keep track of like the duration of the effects. It's going to keep track of how many effects you have and stuff like that. And one thing I've been really debating is I wish I could have found a way to have a unified system that will handle all the effects itself. So I wanted to avoid having to add special code in all my behavior for all potential effects I have to do. But sadly, I came to the conclusion that every effect is going to be highly dependent on the way it is implemented in each system that it's affecting. So like for example, confusion is going to affect the ship controls, where blind is going to affect the equipment that you have on your ship, and then slow is going to affect the action point system. And all of these are implemented very differently, and it would be very hard to have a different system like coming and hooking up to these separate systems and affecting them. So what I decided to go with is that instead, the anomaly behavior, beside managing the duration and all that, is going to add special attributes to inside components of other systems. So for example, for the slow, it's going to add this special multiplier to the moving component. And for the scanner, for example, for the blind effect, when you're losing some range on your scanner, then it's going to put this in scanner result, and it's going to be like a range bonus that can be positive or negative depending on what I want to do. And it's the system itself that uses these components that are going to decide how to implement that. I think it's a good compromise between like having everything in the anomaly behavior and having everything in each individual system separately. But it's still required a lot of changes in all of my systems every time I want to add a new effect. And one of the things that I was worried about is as I was implementing that, there was a lot of questions that I couldn't really answer without playing the game and testing it that can have potential big effects on the system as a whole. For example, can traps be triggered more than once? That's going to affect a lot of things about how I handle the visibility and the triggering of my anomalies. Do the effect stacks? It's going to affect the way I store the effect information and how I calculate my stuff, and it could have really big impact. It can potentially create a lot of bugs. Another one that I'm not quite sure yet is how is the AI going to handle this? Does it have to detect anomalies? Does it know by default where they are? Or does it just not care about it? And if it doesn't care, does it trigger anomalies or cannot? It can only the player trigger anomalies. All these questions will really have a big impact on the game, but until I've played with the anomalies a little bit, like in the game, it's hard to know what to do. After I did all that, the last little bit of thing I had to do was actually try to make traps invisible. And this was actually a bit of a challenge because there was nothing else. Like everything in the game, if it's inside your scanner range, it should be visible. But anomalies are a little bit strange because they have to be invisible at first, and then when they're inside your scanner range, you need to have some kind of chance to turn them visible. And well, the scanner code is a little bit complicated. It tends to break often, so it was a bit of a challenge to change it. And the first thing I tried to do is in my data, I added something called detected. And initially it was false, but then if the player found it, it would turn to true, and then it would be visible. But I quickly changed my mind because, like I said, maybe eventually I want the AI to be aware of anomalies and have a chance to detect them. And if I put this information straight inside the anomaly, then it means that I cannot do it individually for each ship. So what I ended up doing is inside my scanner result, I added this. Let's just check it out. I added this new attribute that I called non-anomalies. And this is now responsible for keeping track of all the anomalies of a specific level that the player has discovered. And if it's in this list, then it should be visible. If it's not in this list, then it will stay invisible even when it's inside scanner range. But you can still, of course, trigger it if you end up on it. And what I ended up doing is also adding some bonus. So depending on the scanner you have equipped, you have more or less chance to detect an anomaly. So if you have a really good scanner, you're pretty sure to see the anomaly before you step on it. But if you have a basic scanner from the beginning, then you probably will never find anomalies until you step on them. So, because of all the uncertainties about how the AI is going to handle that, how the effects are going to stack, and all this, the feature itself is still a little bit rough around the edge. And there's a few things I'm not quite sure, like if this system could be reused for some other stuff. So the slow effect I added could probably be reused with a potion of speed, for example, without it being an anomaly. It could be something you trigger when you use an item in the game or something, and it could try potentially use the same system, but I'm worried I don't want to like overextend the system and all that, but it could be interesting. So I'm not quite sure about it. So I left part of the design a little bit open so that I can go back later when I decide what to do with it. But for now, it's quite nice. I can add a lot of anomalies that add a lot of unknown and discovery to each level, which is really great, I think. So now the anomalies look a little bit like this here. And when you step on it, well, this one just stole some energy from me. So if you look, I have 19,800, and when I step on it, poof, I fall to 18,000. So it stole 1,000 energy from me. And there's another anomaly here that we could try. So this one has slowed me. So if you look at it, we're on the 19th turn right now. And if I move, normally I would take one turn to move. But now, as you can see, I took 2 turns. Another time, 2 turns, 2 turns, 2 turns, 2 turns, 2 turns, and now it says the effect is gone. So as you can see, now it's taking only 1 turn to move. So, these effects are working. Of course, now I have a really good scanner, so I found the effects right away. I found the anomalies right away, but normally they'd be hidden and I'd have to walk around to find them. And that's about it for this week. So I hope even with the new format, you still managed to learn something and you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you guys in my next episode. Bye.